And we're getting closer and closer to live professional lacrosse once again. The two-week PLL Championship Series begins on July 25th. The champions crowned in Utah on August 9th. Major League Lacrosse's tournament beginning on July 18th in Annapolis. The 6 teams competing as a part of MLL's 20th anniversary season. The Chesapeake Bayhawks are the defending champs. For more perspective now, we have someone who knows how to win a championship. Former Ohio Machine head coach Bear Davis, who coached the likes of Tom Schreiber and Kyle Harrison to a Steinfeld Cup in 2017, starting the Ohio Machine and building them into a championship franchise. I spoke to him earlier this week. We bring in Bear Davis now, former coach of the Ohio Machine and also a new co-host of the Lacrosse podcast. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But Bear, we got 2 tournaments coming up here in the matter of a few weeks. I guess when you look at this on a wider scale, what's your first reaction to sort of seeing how everything is set up here within the next month?
Well, I think it's really cool and innovative to be able to get the games in. Obviously, I applaud both leagues and doing looking through the player safety, trying to do everything they can to keep the players safe, and also just to be able to have a sense of normalcy with games being played. The logistics, I'm sure, are crazy, but if you look at it, guys are generally taking in days off work for the whole summer, collectively here and there. Now they're just putting them together as almost like the role games to some degree. It probably makes more sense to compare to that experience. And some of the things that came initially to my mind is like these guys have never played this many games in this short of window. So managing that's going to be real interesting, just not from the player or from the coaches and manager aspect, but from the players and athletic trainers, and so I think those are going to be different logistics that no coach or player has gone through yet.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the timing. We'll start with the MLL because they play first, and I guess the windows they talked about seem to be pretty important. And that they got their plan and they'll be back on the field before the PLL, which to me, for them, is a pretty big deal. And what's your perspective on that in terms of the timing of when these tournaments are going to be?
Yeah, well, they did pick the hottest times of the summer almost, so that's going to throw in there as well. But I think people are hungry for live sports and to have both have the MLL kick off with some lacrosse, especially on major networks, where they're accessible games, people can watch them, fairly easily, and then bleed right into the PLL. I mean, obviously, both leagues have incredible talent. They're going to have good lacrosse. So I think this is exciting for the game. I don't know if it was going to be better one way or the other if the MLL would have went after the PLL. I think for the average fan, there's always that the rule changes from one league to the other league. Those get a little bit tricky to just someone watching the game that doesn't really necessarily understand that aspect. I think that happens from college to pro to high school. We lose a lot of parents, and some of those rules are like, whoa, wait a second. And I think each broadcast, just kicking off. And I think most of the hosts that they have, doing the games, commentators, do a pretty good job of explaining those nuances and those rules. But I think just in the first part, just to really for those fans to dumb it down a little bit and say, hey, these are some of the key rules, and they're a little bit different than maybe some other leagues or college lacrosse per se.
Yeah, this is a sprint for both leagues. I guess put yourself in your coaching shoes again and tell us, I guess, how you've won a championship before, but probably not like this. I guess what is the philosophy? Do you change things? I guess take us inside what some of these coaches are going to be trying to do to be successful in this format.
Yeah, I've been able to speak with a couple coaches and just kind of pick their brain and see what they're doing. I mean, the MLL has gone to just a bigger roster too, and I think that's something that no coach has been accustomed to is having that large roster and how are you going to manage it. And some coaches are talking about just more dynamic players, like guys that can handle more than one role, can step in and play midfield if you need them to. And then you get in that battle where you look at some of these rosters where they're throwing in 3 goalies, 2 face-off guys versus 1 face-off guy. And I think those positions is where it gets real tricky because it kind of depends on your goalie situation. I think if you have a goalie that soaks a lot of shots with his body, this is going to be a tough run. I think it's going to be a real tough run. And if you're one of those teams that doesn't necessarily have a battle-tested second goalie, Where are you going to piece it together? Where are you going to give your one goalie a break? Because some of these veterans, they're great, but I think we all realize as you get older, your hand-eye maybe slows down a little bit, and you start relying on body and positioning, and that's just a lot, especially in that heat for those guys. And the face-offs, you figure these are going to be potentially super high-scoring games. I would think, some of them. I look at some of the defenses versus some of the offenses, and I think the MLL is going to see a lot of high-scoring games. That means, what are you doing at the face-off, X? How are you managing those guys? I think, looking through a lot of the rosters, there's definitely different philosophies and how they're going to approach this game. It's going to be interesting how they come out in the end.
Do you think this format puts anyone to more of an advantage than anyone else, depending on what their personnel is made up? You alluded to it, I guess, a little bit just now.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a midfield. I would say you have to have the legs at midfield. That'd be my philosophy. But even when we won the championship, we went heavy on the D mids. But we had a lot of horses on the offensive side that we weren't subbing a lot for. So you got to pick and choose who you're not, taking off the field. If you've got some horses in a certain area where you don't feel like you need to sub as frequently, you can load up somewhere else. That was just the choice that we had made at the time, because we felt like a lot of our D middies, quote unquote, could push the tempo for us in transition and play some offense and stay out there if we needed them to. And that was just our personal philosophy in that. Always felt like we had two good goalies, and could rely on either good goalie to step in. But those, like I said, you got to roll the dice, especially when you got these rookies coming in that's never played, or you have some guys that have been spot playing, and now they're going to be asked to play 5 games in a small window.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting once you get to the latter games. I think that's where a lot of that's going to come into play, right?
Yeah, it was back when the ML originally was doing their 2-game, over the weekend championship series. One of the things that we had discussed, or they had discussed, that changed it was we never do that during the regular season. At that point, you weren't really ever seeing double headers on weekends. So it was just a unique thing and you see it in college lacrosse, where you have the semifinals on Saturday and then the championship game on Monday. And generally teams, college lacrosse weren't doing that. So you've seen teams that were going to the Final Fours more often. We're starting to do that Saturday, Tuesday game a little bit more often, just so you can become accustomed to this. That's where this gets crazy. The only guys that are kind of used to, potentially this many games, the guys that played in the World Games. And to be honest with you, they're not playing this high level of games at this kind of wave, in the World Games. You're playing Canada. If you're USA, you're playing Canada twice. Iroquois for a run there, and then the rest of it's a little bit different. So, so that's what it's going to be intense. These guys are going to. I've seen these guys in the locker room after games, and they're going to add a couple more ice baths to these games. Couple more athletic trainers.
Right. If they're allowed in the locker room, because who knows? I mean, there's obviously different protocols, so that's also another impact of this. I'm wondering, the timing of all of this. I mean, the MLL, I guess, more than the PLL will be competing with baseball a bit in their opening weekend, and then eventually the NHL. But the visibility for the sport, can this make an impact long term in terms of the timing and being able to get some more eyeballs out there, just because of the lack of things going on in the world of sports these days? Do you think it can make a long-term impact?
Yeah, there's a real opportunity here, and just getting the word out. It's always been part of the issue, is just getting the word out about it, and now that they're on these ESPN, NBC, I mean, these are great platforms. I think obviously LSN's a great platform, but it's got to be one that it's a rarity that people just come across it type thing, and this is the opportunity to. People are sports hungry, I mean, I was watching WWE on a Friday night, and they're like empty arena, like I'll watch anything and, bet my son on it if I need to, a Coke or something. I don't know. I think people are just hungry, and I think it's a real opportunity for us to, make a difference and get it out in front of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, you're working now with Laxworm as a co-host of the podcast. Tell us a little bit about that opportunity and some of the things you're going to want to do in terms of getting your voice more in tune and back in the sport a little bit more now these days.
Yeah, so my world has been wrapped up in high school girls lacrosse and 2025, boys travel team, that I coach. So it's good, now, I mean, perspectives all over the place with me, and it always kind of has been, and I would like to think I can bring a, different, different perspective, just knowing that I've coached in all those different arenas. And Mike does a great job with Lacrosse when he was doing it. When I first started coaching, thought his take was always excellent. And it's just going to be something different. We're going to have fun with it. We both he called me up and said, "Hey, what do you think about co-hosting with me?" And I told him, I was like, "Oh man, let's have fun with it. Let's maybe bring a different perspective. I think it's always good when you have." That combination. I think that's what probably worked so long with Mike and Mike. You had someone that's been in the trenches and someone who was a reporter, and just bouncing things back and forth, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, anytime you get in the bear cave, I mean, it's always a good thing because there's a lot of perspective in there. You coach a lot of great athletes, a lot of good teams. Can't wait to listen to that. It's out now, so you guys just started this week because it's kind of cool. Thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. And we got some lacrosse. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, no, I think everyone should be super excited. I think it's been less talk about which league's better or this or that. I think people are just ready to watch, pro lacrosse, which there's going to be great players. I'm looking at these rosters and some of these guys. I know some people haven't really necessarily heard of them, but I would say do some research because you're going to see some incredible talent coming in from the NLL. Some guys that played very big roles on their college teams, stepping up. And I just wish both leagues the best of luck and happy to be able to watch some lacrosse.
That's what growing the game's all about. Bear Davis, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Thanks.